put it on our page. So, somebody tell me just briefly, what is this?
A furnace.
It is a furnace. Very good. Can anybody guess what year it was built? And some of y'all might
Long
know.
time ago.
That is a great answer. Anybody?
1953.
Let's go way back. Let's go over 100 years back from what she just said. This is really old. Somebody with one more guess.
1863.
That is a good guess. Go back 20 years and you got it right there.
How about 1 million days?
Well, that would be long. It was actually built in 1843, so you were close.
You said it a second.
There was a man who lived near here, and his name was Nathaniel Moody. And in 1840, he bought 107 acres right here on the Dan River. So right over there, don't go there now, but right over there is the Dan River. He bought all this land here because he was going to build this and do some other things. He borrowed $10,000, which back then was a ton of money. He borrowed $10,000 to buy all the land and set up a company. And I'm going to have to look at my notes because I don't know all this by heart. So in 1843, he bought the land in 1840. 3 years later, they built this. He joined up with a local man named John Pepper, and they built this furnace, and they called their company Moody's Tunnel Iron Works. Well, about 11 years later, if you're doing your math in your head, you'll know that's 1854. A man named Reuben Golding came. He bought it, so it's changed hands a few times. He bought it and called it the Stokes Iron Mining Company, and he started doing what this is designed to do, make iron. And we're going to talk a little bit about what we would do with all that. In 1862, this man, Reuben Golding, and his partners started another company called the Moratock. Does anybody recognize that name, Moratock? That's what this park is named, Moratock Park, after the company that built this, that used this furnace, Moratock Mining and Manufacturing Company. Now, I just mentioned that the final company that owned this was started in 1862. Can anybody tell me something historical going on in 1862? What was happening in 1862? Anybody know?
Think about a tall hat.
Malachi, you're studying that. I can't believe you don't know.
Mom, I'm not good with history. You know that.
You're watching it on TV.
Does not
watching
change
the
anything.
miniseries.
Does not change anything. Civil War.
Good guess, but he just answered it. Civil War was going on in 1862. The Civil War is going to play a really big role in why this is no longer a furnace, which we'll talk about that in a minute. Somebody tell me, what do you think this was used for? Like a furnace at my house used to be used to heat my house. Do you know?
To make like big bowls.
You think of cannonballs.
That's exactly right. That's one thing it was used for. But what did it make that was used to make all these instruments?
Weapons, vehicles, stuff like
Well,
that.
what material are they made out of?
Metal.
What kind of metal?
Iron.
Very good. So this was an iron furnace. I mean, look how tall this thing is.
No.
It's amazing it's still here. Now, iron furnaces, if you all had lived before the Civil War, you didn't have a lot of like factories and stuff. The Industrial Revolution was just kind of getting going here. So you didn't have a lot of industries in North Carolina, but iron furnaces were big industries. Why do you think it was a big industry? What did you need iron for? Why do we need to have a furnace to make iron? You said weapons, like a cannonball and artillery. What else?
I was thinking of swords.
I think bricks. I think bricks. I think bricks.
Did you say bricks?
Yeah.
I thought he said, well, not bricks. That's a good guess.
But
I bet your mama's got something in her kitchen right now that's made of iron.
right.
Not quite. Anybody got a cast iron frying pan? You see your mama use the old black skillet?
I didn't know that was made of
That
iron.
was-
Mom has a lot of them.
We
thought
do
that was just made
too.
of regular
And
metal.
this was used to make the iron that would make the frying pans. And if y'all lived a long time ago, you know, the men in your family, the boys, sometimes the women, would have plows and axes. They had to use all these tools. And iron was used for all this. So we don't think about how did they get the iron. This made the iron. And we'll talk about how they did that. Now, I'm going to tell you in a little bit, and some of y'all who were here last time, like Mason and Malachi and Charlotte, I don't know who else was here 5 years ago, but you're going to still find some of the iron they made here in the ground. We're going to look for it when we finish, so don't start doing it now. And I'll tell you it's not right here as a rule. But there were two kinds of iron that was made here. You had cast iron, which is what your mama's frying pans are made out of. It was a purer kind of iron, and it was flexible, so you could pour it in a mold. You know, you'd pour it when it was melted in a mold, and it would make all kinds of stuff. And then it also made something called pig iron. Now, yes, pig, I know it's a funny name. Pig iron was not as flexible. It was more brittle. It was not as pure. It still had other things mixed in, but you could still use it. You could use it for stuff like wrought iron fencing and decorations on a house. Sometimes you would even use it for like a bridge support because you'd want to make it of iron to make it strong. And back in the 1800s, there were a lot of fires, and because they cooked in their homes and stuff over open fires. There were a lot of fires that would burn up buildings. So would you want to make all your buildings of wood? Because that's going to burn fast. So a lot of companies started building their buildings out of iron. And so this was used for things like that. Now, and weapons, when we get to the Civil War, we'll talk about that. Now, notice how tall it is. And y'all see the road back there behind it? Notice it's built on a hill. These kinds of furnaces were called charcoal blast furnaces, and they were always built against a hillside. And the reason was there was a bridge right on top of that where the road is now. There was a bridge, because think about this. To make iron, you got to dig this iron ore out of the ground. And it's very, very heavy. And to make it into iron eventually, you got to put it in a furnace and get it really, really hot. So you got to have heavy iron ore. You got to have charcoal, which comes from trees originally. You got to have charcoal, and you had to have this limestone type mixture that you poured in with it. That's heavy stuff. So let's say that y'all pulled your horse and buggy right up here, and y'all horses, and you came up here and you're like, okay, wait a minute. We got to get all this heavy stuff to the top, because you pour it in the top in layers. You would layer it according to the different materials. A little bit of iron ore, a little bit of charcoal, a little bit of limestone mixture, then start over again. So the smart thing to do is have these furnaces built on the hillside so that the bridge on top, you can just drive your horse and buggy straight up on the bridge and pour it in the top. Does that make sense to y'all? So they poured it in the top, but here's the problem. You got to get the fire super, super hot to make the iron molten or melted so that it comes down and it would run out here, about where we are right now. How you gonna get a fire that hot? Does anybody know? How do you get a fire hotter? Charcoal burns a good hot fire. Anybody know? Okay, have you ever started a fire at home? Now when you light a match and you want to blow it out, you know, you can blow out that little match. But there's an ingredient in the air that makes fire burn more. Does anybody know what that is?
Air.
What's in air that makes it? Yeah. Go further. What do you breathe? Oxygen. So oxygen, that's why, here's the little lesson y'all have all learned. If you were ever to catch a sleeve on fire or something on your clothing, God forbid, but if you ever did, what are you supposed to do?
Roll to dampen it.
Yes, you pat it, you don't want air to get to it. Or like we learned in school, stop, drop, and roll. You know, if your clothes ever caught on fire,
drop,
fall
and
on
roll.
the ground and start rolling. You've seen people their clothes catch on fire, like in movies or something, they take off running. That makes the fire burn hotter, because oxygen makes it burn hotter. So when they had the charcoal in here and they wanted it to burn really hot, they need more oxygen. So what could you do? I mean, you could hire 20 men to sit there and go blow on it, but you're not going to do that. Does anybody have an idea what they could have done?
What are those called?
Bellows?
The bellows.
That's it.
Yep, that's what I was thinking.
There were giant bellows that were so huge here that they had to be water powered.
Wow.
Seriously.
How do you water
So, you know
power
bellows, you've seen them in a
bellow?
fireplace, you go like this.
Do we have a picture of that somewhere?
I don't know if the bellows are there,
Sorry
but
for shaking
in a
the
minute
video.
I'm going to take them down there and let them look at the marker, which has the way it used to look. The bellows may be there, but I didn't look today. But you would do the bellows, it was mechanically, would it be mechanical if it's
Machine.
water? Machine,
It
that's
makes a
right,
machine.
water's like a machine.
Water-powered machine.
That's true. And it would blow on this and make the fire so hot, and all of a sudden, the iron would start dripping down. It would melt, and it would pull in the bottom. Now you notice there's an opening there, and there used to be, I guess they're still there, I didn't go look. This has 3, are they still there? 3 arched openings? Okay, I didn't even look
I thought those
today.
were 4
I don't guess they close them up. Right where you're standing,
in the back.
there were like these long molds, really, like a cast mold, and the iron would roll out in it, and it would harden here. Okay, so now you got your iron. You've got what you wanted to make here, but you got to transport it because they need it up in Richmond to make some weapons or something. So how you going to get it there? Anybody got a good guess? How?
The train.
You are right, but you got to get it to the train.
The train
Okay,
exists
so
back
you can
then.
put it on a horse and a horse and buggy. This stuff is so super heavy. Can anybody think of where you are right now and what's nearby that could have helped you get it somewhere? The Dan River right over there. They had flatboats. I mean, we don't see boats on it now except like kayaks or, somebody's paddling a canoe. They had flatboats that could literally go from here to Danville, Virginia, which is where the nearest railroad was. So Everett was right. The nearest railroad at that point, we didn't even have one in Walnut Cove then, was in Danville, Virginia, and they would put it on flatboats and take it there. Yes, sir.
What is a flatboat?
Just a flatboat. I mean, I don't know. It's
The
just,
bottom's flat.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
I guess
yeah.
It wouldn't,
yeah, like a lot of boats are streamlined
Yeah.
at the bottom, flatboat is flat.
like a raft, almost like a.
Wow.
Yeah, like a raft. That's it. Yeah.
I just saw a picture today of
No, when you're
a
waiting
friend
for-
Also-
going over
Okay.
on a train, going over the mighty Dan in Danville,
No
and I
way.
didn't even realize that the Dan River went all the way to Danville. In
Yes.
my mind, I'm like, well, duh, that makes sense.
But here's the thing. Here's what I was thinking. The Danville, that's up. That's going across against the current.
It is.
But that's what they did.
Wow.
The flatboats went all the way north to Danville, Virginia. I thought this was such cool stuff. Now, when you look around, another question.
Yeah, I was right.
Yeah.
Okay. Trains existed back then?
Yeah.
I thought they didn't come around until Laura Mary's time.
Well, Laura was born 1860 something.
So the Civil War was just happening?
Yeah, when Laura was born. She was born right after the Civil War.
Oh.
You can tell we're reading Little House on the Prairie, but Laura and Mary. But anyway, yes. So, everybody, I want you to think. Think about all that you know already. I've already told you that these kind of furnaces have to be built beside a hillside so you can drive up at top of them and pour your stuff in. But for everything else I told y'all we needed for an iron furnace, why is this a really good spot? Why would this have been a great place? You got a hillside. We know
It's
that.
not sunny.
What?
I was saying, well, I was narrowing things down. It's like, it's not
Well, think about
sunny.
what you need.
We need the resources.
Yes.
What resources do we have? That
Remember
we
what I
have to
said?
have to make charcoal.
Yes, trees.
You need
Make
trees.
charcoal.
Yes.
And what did we say? We had to
That's
have
true, they
water
did.
power for bellows, and you have to have water
Charcoal
power
is made
to
from trees, not coal.
transportation. So you got the trees. You got the river for the water power. You got the
So that's
hillside. But guess
food.
what? Stokes County, I don't know if it still does, I guess. Stokes County had an abundant supply of iron ore. The Piedmont, North Carolina, this general region had really good iron ore. It's not everywhere. So we had a really good storage for that. Now, I want you to look at this. And I want you to see the bottom of it. The bottom of it is built in, the base was built in, it was like a trapezoid. I don't know if anybody studied math far enough that you know what a trapezoid is. The base of it is 28 square feet, and it's 28 feet tall, but at the top it's only 26 square feet. So you can see it sort of tapers in a little, so it's not quite as big around with the square footage as it is down here. You see it had 3 arches. It was built of granite blocks. There's a town near here called Mount Airy. Anybody ever been to Mount Airy? It's the original Mayberry on TV. And that's where they got it. They think they got some of this granite. So, I wish we could go up there and touch it, but they put this little fence up now. So you see these ginormous granite blocks? People still wonder how in the world they were hand carved to be so perfect, that they could fit just so beautifully. There's one theory that Steve Shelton told us 5 years ago. He said one theory is that they brought in Italian stone cutters to do this. I have no idea. We can't prove that. But when you look at that, usually when you stack up blocks like that, there's something you have to put in between it to make them stick and stay. Does anybody know what that's called?
Glue.
Somebody said it. I heard it. Mortar. mortar, you know, which is like a cement type thing. When y'all look at that, there is no mortar. It is amazing that they constructed this furnace with no mortar. Now, they got some rocks chinked in there, but there's no mortar.
And one thing of metal
Which is-
sticking out.
Still amazing
So
to
you
people.
think the little rock chinks, were they original too?
Very possibly, probably. But there was no mortar, which is crazy. All right, I'm gonna finish this up because I think this is just a fascinating place. Can you name, let's go to the Civil War now. Let's finish up with the Civil War because I told you the last guy who bought this and really made it operate well bought it in 1862, which as y'all said, Civil War was going on. Can somebody tell me, raise your hand, I want to see your hand raised. Who was fighting the Civil War? Which two armies?
The North and South.
Okay, we can keep it that simple, which is true, North and South. Let's go further. There was some names.
What were they called?
Anybody know?
I know one of the names.
Okay,
One of them was called the Yankees.
okay. You could say that too. There's even more. You could say the Yankee Army, which was up north. And then if you're going to go with those names, which are just kind of nicknames, the Yankee Army, who was the Southern Army as a nickname? Don't say the real name yet. The Yankees versus the, well, some did call them the Dixie, the Rebs, the Rebels. But the Dixie was, you know, part of it. The Rebels. So you had the Yankees, the Yanks versus the Rebs. But now give me some real names. Official.
Blue coats?
No, you're thinking
The
the Patriot
Union?
Revolutionary War.
Maybe.
Well, no,
Yes, did y'all hear what she
Americans have
said?
blue coats.
You got the Union Army, which is the Northern Yankee Army. There's another one. Who was down south?
Oh,
The
oh, oh,
Confederate.
yeah.
Yes,
him.
thank you. So you had the Union Army versus the Confederate, North versus South. All right, let's think about this.
I would have said something earlier.
Which side of the army, you know, you got the North and South. We'll just say North and South right now. Who do you think operated this furnace, the North or South? You're right, because here we are down south in North Carolina. What do you think they were making here in 1862?
Iron?
Definitely iron. To be used for what? You're right, iron is what they made here.
What you're asking, what product?
Yes,
Okay.
iron is the product. But then what did iron go to be used for in 1862?
To make tools?
Definitely tools, because we still needed them. But there's more civil guns, definitely.
Oh, I was gonna say weapons.
Yes,
Like
even
swords.
even
Ah,
swords.
okay.
He mentioned cannonballs a while ago. So this was being used like crazy. If y'all had lived here in 1862, this thing is fired up probably, we don't know, but we do have some records. It was fired up all the time because the South was like, make us weapons. You know, we're trying to beat the North, give us some weapons. So, think about this, y'all. If you were the Northern Army, what would you want to do?
I would definitely get the live cannonball.
Everybody listen to what he just said.
But then the weapons fly.
Absolutely right.
He
If
just said
you-
that.
Oh, same answers here. If you're up north, you're like, I gotta stop them from making weapons because we can win the war if they can't fight us. So what are you gonna try to shut down? The iron furnaces. So that's exactly what happened here. Almost at the end of this. I live in this town now. I'm from Walnut Cove, but I live in Danbury now. And Danbury is such a historic place. You do. Is your address Danbury too? Yes, it is.
I'm technically Sandy Ridge. I'm right over there.
Oh, you're just over the line. You're close. You're close. But in Danbury, you got all this history because guess what? The Civil War. Does anybody know when it started? Throw it out quickly.
In 1861.
Absolutely right. 1861. Now, he bought that furnace in 1862, cranked her up again, and kept it going to make weapons. Well, the war's almost over. It's been going on for 4 years now. It is springtime. I mean, this is fall now, but just imagine that it's springtime in Danbury, and it's early April. Anybody born in April? Got any April birthdays? One April birthday? So it's a beautiful April day, probably close to your birthday, Charlotte, because I know when it is. And all of a sudden, you hear horses. You hear marching feet. Try to be still with that. You hear marching feet coming down here. You know why? Because one of the generals from the Northern Army, General Stoneman, was marching possibly as many as 9,000 of his soldiers to Danbury. Where did they camp? probably everywhere. I live right down the road. They were probably at my creek. I literally think they were at my creek. 9,000 soldiers? Now, General Stoneman, because he was, you know, he was the general, he stayed at a hotel in Danbury called Moody's Tavern, probably operated by the man who built the furnace originally. So here's the soldiers, and you know why they're here. I mean, why are they coming to Danbury? They had already been in Tennessee. They could have gone back to where they're supposed to go to. They'd gone to Virginia, and then somebody said, go to Danbury and cut up, do away with that furnace. So here he came with his soldiers to shut this down. And he did shut it down. But here's the problem. When y'all are looking at that right now, there it is. Why do you think he didn't tear it down? Like get something like beat the rocks and tear it down? Anybody got an idea?
Maybe for somebody else to look at?
He could have. That would have been nice, but he wasn't being very nice right then. He might have been a nice man, but he wasn't being nice right then. So he can do what?
Wasn't it at the end? While they
It
were
was,
here?
yes, it was
While
at
they
the,
were like camping and waiting and everything.
the war ended while they were there. But he did tear it down. He put it out of commission. How did he do it? Because what you see today was only a tiny part of this. The reason they had to have so much land is there were wooden buildings. And I'm going to show you a picture in a minute. There was wooden buildings going all over the place here. All you got to do to shut down a furnace like this is go set everything on fire. So he came and set everything on fire here, and there was no need to shut this down. That's why it's still here today. There's only one other furnace of this type left in North Carolina. It's in Lee County. And I'm ashamed to say I don't know where Lee County is. Maybe east? I don't know. Don't take that. I don't know. Lee County has one left, and it's on the Deep River, wherever that is. But he had no need to do anything else because the wooden buildings were all burned down. Now, when General Stoneman came here, he thought that, okay, let's say y'all all lived here in Danbury in 1865, early April. He thought when I go try to shut down that furnace, everybody's going to fight me. But nobody rose up and fought. And it's for the reason that they just said a minute ago. The war had officially ended on April 9th, 1865. He didn't know it when he came here. The people had gotten word that General Robert E. Lee had surrendered up in Virginia at Appomattox Courthouse. It was over. So the people were like, why fight? The war's over. They let him destroy it. It was destroyed for 5 years. Somebody built it back. Opened it back in 1870, 5 years, as I said, past 1865. They only ran it every now and then after that. It was occasional that they'd fire it up when you really had a need for something. And then as of 1890, it shut down forever. And it has never run again since 1890. And that was quite a long time ago. I think that's all I'm going to tell you about it right now. I do want you to think about the name of this. This was called the Moratock Furnace. Moratock, what does that sound like to you? Moratock. What kind of word?
Tomorrow.
Yeah. Does it sound like a Spanish word, a French word, or what kind of word?
Sounds like tomorrow.
Moratock.
Indian.
It's Indian.
Ah.
It was, that's right. Down near the North Carolina coast where the lost colony was, if you studied that story, there was an Indian tribe called the Moratocks. We have no idea why the people who built the furnace here called it the Moratock Mining Forest.
But why not
Furnace.
the SAR? Because wasn't it the,
Yeah,
the
The Sarah were here. The Dan River's named after a Sarah chief.
Okay.
So we don't even know why, that somebody may know, I don't, why this is called the Moratock Furnace. But the park, the people who owned all this land sold it to the county in 1973. I think only one of us was born then. Maybe two of us maybe. Two of us were born in 1973, and that's when they sold this to the county, and the county made a park of it and named it Moratock Park.
So it's now up to them for the preservation and all the things they do to our
Anything-
tax dollars. Yeah.
Do what?
Our tax dollars.
Our tax dollars at work right here. And I guess they put this thing up because people maybe were trying to, I don't know.
I think it didn't used to be up.
Here
It didn't
earlier
used to be up.
telling me that he talked, the gentleman sitting up here, and now I'm not sure how, you know, but said that they were dealing with some vandalism and stuff, and they've been out trying to, he said they roped it off, and he was telling me some more things I couldn't really understand, but I did hear
I
him
wish
say they
people
roped
leave
it off.
stuff alone. It's like the rock house. I used to go walk around
Yep,
inside the
can't
rock.
do
Yeah, you
that
can't
either.
do it. Now, what I want you to do, because that's all I'm going to say,
Do you want to turn
tell
off
you
the
where you
video?
can find some waste materials. Bring the camera, follow us.
Oh, okay.
Down here, you can see an artist's drawing of what it might have looked like originally.
Isn't that neat? What it might have looked like when you showed up down here. That's what you probably would have seen.
She didn't ask me how much I weigh. COVID took off about 10 pounds. Now, we don't know it looked like this, but Frank Duncan, who's an artist locally, you probably know Frank, don't you? He's a very nice man, and he drew that and said that's probably what it looked like. Do y'all see where the furnace rock part is? Yes. Yeah, I don't see bellows, do y'all?
They write it like that, and they like make like people to fight with stuff.
That's right.
Like throwing stuff.
They made weapons from the iron that came. Let's see what they got there. There's the name of it, Moratock Mining. See, that's the old U.S. flag. I don't think, yeah, that's not the Confederate flag. Do what, honey? That's made out of wood. So when General Stoneman came down, he burned all the wood stuff and only left the rock. That's why that's there. Hey, and now I'll show you where last time, 5 years ago, Steve Shelton, the historian, showed us where we could find some waste material from the Civil War era, and it's right over there.
Yeah, we found some.
We found some. Ma'am, what you do with yours? Do you remember? You can turn that off now.
Okay.